Well, good afternoon and welcome to Rowan County. This is the County Commission meeting for September 7th, 2021. It's 3 o'clock in the afternoon. We're honored that you spend your time with us this afternoon. Hope you've had a good Labor Day weekend and hope this week is a good, safe one for you. We begin all of our meetings the same way. It's been this tradition and the tradition of this board and thousands of others that we begin a couple ways. We're going to have a pledge of allegiance. Before that, we'll have our chaplain come forward. He's going to give what's called a solemnizing prayer. And that's a legal term that means the prayer's for us. It's not for you. It's for the commissioners. Because every time we meet, we understand that we don't know it all. And so we seek wisdom where we can get it. And certainly our chaplain will come forward and ask for wisdom in the best place we know how. So, Chaplain, if you'll come forward, commissioners, if you'll join me, we'll get started.
Commissioners, thank you for the privilege to pray today. Lord, we come to you today. We thank for our county commissioners, Lord. We pray you'll give them the wisdom they need today in this meeting today. We thank for them and their love and support of Rowan County, Lord, and the many, many hours they put in, not at just this meeting, but all week long, Lord. We pray you'll help them, dear Lord. We ask you to bless this meeting today. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Chaplain Taylor, for being with us as always. We appreciate it.
Nobody signed it.
All right, I think there's just one change maybe to the agenda. Commissioner Klusman?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, if we could possibly move item number 8 up to 2A, right under public comment, I would really appreciate that.
Is that okay with everyone? Thank you. Any other additions or deletions, changes, movements? All right, then do we have a motion to approve the agenda? Second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Then we have the minutes of August 16th, 2021. Motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Consent agenda, didn't change anything on there. Consent agenda, motion to approve in a second, please.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, we have no one for public comments. We'll move directly to item 2A. Commissioner Klusman.
Yes, my Vaya friends probably don't realize that I just moved you to number 1. So please come forward.
Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Great to be here. Chairman.
Thank you.
Ingram, who is the CEO of Vaya Health, and Vaya is merging with Cardinal. So Brian will continue to be the CEO of the new company, and we're so glad he could join us today to talk about what's going on.
Sure, appreciate that. And I was thinking Commissioner Klusman had a chance to meet with her earlier today just for a few minutes in terms of how well things have been going. A lot going on right now with Medicaid transformation and of course the consolidation that Vaya is involved with Cardinal. And the shorthand on that is that Vaya will be the surviving entity. And at some point next year, Cardinal will no longer exist, probably by about the first of the year, and then it'll be sort of seamless. A lot of it happens behind the curtain so that, ideally no one is even aware that much has changed. Vaya will be taking over all the operations of Cardinal. And first and foremost, our goal with that, and this is the fourth time that we've done something like this with another LME MCO, is that for the consumers especially, and then for the providers, that's absolutely seamless. So again, that nothing really feels or acts any different is really our goal. And I was saying to your DSS director, Micah, and Commissioner Klusman, we've been going around to all the different counties and doing what I call the discovery tour, where we ask people, well, what's working, what's not working. And, your county in particular, has enjoyed a really positive relationship with Cardinal. And so one of the first questions was, well, you're not going to change anything, are you? Because we really like how things are going. And, our intention isn't to make anything worse, but to only make things better. And I have Brian Keating and Zach Shepard with me here today. They'll be very important folks for you to work with. We have a real intensive kind of on the ground approach, and they'll be your go-to folks with whatever you need help with. And their approach is to really be engaged at the level of, county government, key stakeholders, all of those folks in the community. So I wanted to be sure to introduce them. There's a short PowerPoint we have, and for whatever value that is to you, that's great. We can just kind of go through that quickly, and really just happy to, be here and answer any questions you might have. I can get everything to work properly here.
You can either use your arrow keys, or you can hover like you were just then, or use the arrows at the top.
Excellent, thank you. Just some of the simple things that we promise, as we've gone out and met with folks, and, really appreciate your confidence in us in terms of sticking with the consolidation. The last one there, stability. There's a lot to that, especially given the degree of turmoil that exists now with Medicaid, again, with Medicaid transformation, the go live of the standard plans, and then changes for us that will result probably, anticipated to be next July, where we would be what's called a tailored plan. And that would mean that we would take over all the responsibilities for the management of individuals with the most chronic conditions. And we would do what we do now, which is manage all the specialty care, but also manage all the physical health. So we were just approved to be contracted for that.
Could
Yes,
you
ma'am.
just share a few of those types of care that you give? Because I don't know that everybody
Sure.
knows that.
So currently, and again, we're a government employees, and our responsibility is to manage the care for individuals that have problems associated with mental illness, substance use, or intellectual and developmental disabilities. And we receive Medicaid funding, and we receive state funding, and we receive a little bit of federal funding and block grants, as well as county support. And our job is to get the greatest benefit for the individual that can be managed, given whatever challenges they might experience. But we only do that around the management of those services for what I refer to as the specialty care, mental illness, substance use, and IDD. So again, the change is that we will also take on the physical health needs of those individuals that are Medicaid eligible beginning next year in July. And it'll be a smaller population, but much more chronic. So those are those citizens that you have that, have the greatest challenges essentially with healthcare. And a lot of times it's access, combining the care that might be part physical, part behavioral. Our responsibility will be to put all of that together. And to do so with a budget where we're at risk. So in other words, we're like an insurance company where we get a set amount of funding to manage the care, and that's it. We have to manage within that amount of funding. So again, it's just the most efficient and effective way that those folks can gain benefit. Stability, by not jumping ship, we're able to just take all the existing contracts that exist for Cardinal. So all the services that people are receiving now, it's done. All of those contracts are assigned to us. So it's very, very easy for the providers and for the members. And just not having another thing change right now is a big plus. So thank you for, your consideration of that in terms of your confidence with us. And Commissioner Klusman's on the Cardinal board, and she can tell you perhaps better than I. One of the challenges for Cardinal was to decide, well, who are we going to go with here? Because it looks like our future is not in good shape. And they chose us because they thought we could do a good job, essentially. And especially with counties kind of this size and smaller, we have not been out pursuing Mecklenburg or Wake or any of those. It seems that our sort of sweet spot is with kind of the rural to mid-size communities. And doing what we do is a lot different compared to how you approach that in a community this size versus a Mecklenburg or versus a Raleigh. So our success with that, I think, gave confidence to Cardinal to go with us. So, we feel very at home in counties like Rowan. Accountability, again, you've got I'll give you my card, my phone number's on there, you call me. I mean, it's really that simple. And it might not seem like it, but it is. Brian and Zach will be very available to you. We have a lot of kind of redundancies in place and a lot of architecture internally where we keep everybody who's going to be interfacing with you on the same page. We have what we'll call a Rowan County huddle. So that care coordination, who are the folks that are involved in actually the hands-on assistance to folks to being sure they're getting the right services and that the quality is good, meeting with individuals in their home. The folks that work for Provider Network that have the contract with the providers who are receiving services, and then our community relations folks. All three of those groups come together and they'll just talk about Rowan County, for example, so that everybody who is outwardly facing and engaged with your community, your county, will be on the same page with things. It's just simple things like that we've put in place to be sure that we're aware and involved and engaged. Well, yeah, a little bit about the consolidation, the transition planning, pretty much what I said. There's a lot of HR activity now. That's been another question that's been on people's minds. Will my family have the same care coordinator? Well, we sure hope so. That would be our plan. Unless there's some reason, we'll say, why a particular employee from Cardinal would not be well suited to be part of us. We're taking all those employees, especially that are engaged with service in the community. So again, it's really focused on, the best of Cardinal and the best of Vaya coming together. And a lot of the work, and maybe Brian, you want to speak to some of this. There's been a lot of work already underway about, what we can do to kind of pick up where Cardinal has left off and make some improvements.
Yeah, so I think the next slide is just really talking about how we can have a more robust kind of crisis continuum in the community. What we heard in several of the Cardinal counties was maybe not the greatest performance out of mobile crisis and some different programs that maybe we do with jails and law enforcement. So we've already spoke with the police chief in Salisbury around a co-responder type model For those of you that might not be familiar with that, if they think it's behavioral health call, then someone would go out with law enforcement to try to de-escalate that and maybe have a better outcome than what you typically would have. So we've explored that with those individuals, going to pull in EMS and talk with them as well to see. Commissioner Klusman was talking about a desire to have some pre-jailing, some diversion type of either treatment or something for folks so they don't sit in your jail that maybe need behavioral health treatment. So those are things we're really committed to doing. We're going to do that very soon. I've got that on my list, and we'll get some folks pulled together to really look at that. And then just, this talks a little bit more about just making sure that members of our system really have access to medical providers. We know that folks with behavioral health issues typically don't have the best medical care, don't seek out the best medical care. So making sure that that's available. And as Brian was mentioning with the Taylor plan that goes live this next year, we'll be managing physical health for those individuals as well.
Let's see what else we got
How will you
here.
have people available here? Will you have people in Rowan County
sir.
specifically?
Yes, sir.
Absolutely.
And what kind of numbers are we talking about?
I wouldn't be able to tell you right off the bat. There's essentially a formula that goes to how many individuals, and this would be related to care coordination. And, to a lot of people, that looks like case management, which is kind of what it sounds like. Individuals are getting help kind of navigating the system. So it's a hands-on, seeing people in their homes, making sure everything's going in the right direction, problem solving. Those are individuals that are presently, living in Rowan County who are employees of Cardinal that will continue to work for us. So that on the ground presence is something, we absolutely maintain. And again, these guys, will be here for you with whatever is needed.
I would just add, Brian, when you're talking about mobile crisis, so it's 24-hour a day, 365 service. With the proximity of Rowan, we would hire folks that live in this county to make sure that they could respond timely. We're not going to try to bring someone from somewhere else. So there'd be folks living in this community. The standard on that's 2 hours. That's not good enough for us. We typically, it's 30 to 45 minutes max, depending on the proximity and maybe geography challenges in the county. But that's something we definitely want to shore up, and those folks will live and work here. And I think many of the Cardinal staff that work in this community live here as well. So we're really committed to moving forward with those staff.
One of the areas that we've worked really, really hard on, and it began, I can't take any credit for this really. In the original Western counties, whatever, it must have been something in the water, but, we worked very, very diligently with our DSSs and created a continuum that was really designed to meet their needs. So that's something that has been, of interest to a lot of the counties that we've spoken to. And I know you folks have the Partnering for Excellence program with benchmarks. It's just a, fantastic thing. We're happy to, jump on that bandwagon and then bring just a laundry list here of services that, we know really work. And again, they're designed with the input of DSSs. So again, it's about listening and understanding what's needed, and then us figuring out how to deliver it. And then, something that, especially in the beginning, when people were trying to understand who we were, what we do and how we do it, we wanted to be sure to just provide objective data around how well we do compared to the other LME MCOs in the state. And for what it's worth, people, are curious about, well, what's going to be different? Or, are you better than Cardinal? Are you this? Are you that? And it isn't so much that we're trying to be judgmental about that, but we're just trying to show objective data around our performance. Thank you. Yeah, and these were inaccurate probably the day they were printed, because there's been so much change with all the counties happening around. But anyway, one of the things we're very proud of, and you should care a lot about, is service to the non-Medicaid population. And this isn't anything about a political statement, but, without Medicaid expansion, there are thousands of people that need care that there really is no funding for the care. So being able to address the needs of that population to the best of our ability is something that we take very seriously. And, essentially this graph shows what's called our penetration for that population, which is typically, best in the state. How we do that with the catchment area we have, again, has been another thing. Well, gee, you're so big and you're all over. Yeah, but look at what kind of job we do. So again, the words are easy for people to use and have them come out of your mouth. The data is what, really counts. Super measures, again, we're one of only 2 LME MCOs in the state that meet all of these requirements. See the report card. So green is good. And you see for Vaya, it's all green, right? So in terms of performance, we expect to continue that, do the best job we can. Following up after discharge. This is another one that should be very important to you. Arguably, people are most vulnerable when they're discharged from the hospital, right? I mean, you think of your own life or your family or anyone you might know, that's a tricky time where you're transitioning from a place where all the care is being provided to back at home. So for individuals with mental illness and substance use problems, same thing. This data is specific to how well we engage with folks post-discharge. So again, it's demonstrating to you that we're on it right away in situations where people are most at need. And the same thing here for the Medicaid population. And you go over to the right and you always see that blue bar way up highest, that's us. And with ICF, one of the things, intermediate care facilities is what that stands for. We do our best to help people live the best lives they can. It's really that simple. And a lot of times folks, who have not had a lot of experience in the community can't even imagine aspiring to that. And it's really remarkable what we found when you provide the support, the extra support that people would need to be able to live outside of an institution. Excuse me. So we're one of the ones that's really gone the furthest with that. Excuse me. Not that institutional care is not appropriate for folks. It is for the right folks at the right time. But that doesn't mean that individuals can't, Well, that might be the end of the show, huh? So I'm not going to take up any more of your time, but I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
So this map, you said it was probably inaccurate the day it was printed. Are we going to be an island? Vaya?
No, not in my evaluation. I mean, you're going to be.
You know what I'm asking.
Yeah, you're going to be surrounded by counties that have gone in different directions. And if your question is that going to, is that going to harm you? No, it isn't. I mean, we're going to be as present and as engaged here as we are with every other county. It really, it just, the way we do it is we bring it to you. Okay. So regardless of whether it's Buncombe County, where our original corporate office is, or whether you're out in Franklin County, you're getting the same cheeseburger, right? What we do is we deliver there with a particular approach and a particular model. The community relations, the provider network, all of that is the same regardless of where you are. So yeah, the colors of the counties around you will be different. That won't make anything a negative for you or worse for you.
I'll say this, and I say it respectfully. Well, first of all, I want to thank Commissioner Klusman for all the work she does on this. She's very passionate about it, very knowledgeable about it, and she's a great asset to this board in this area especially. As you can well imagine, we've been under tremendous pressure to make other decisions to move on. So that's not judging you or us or anyone else. It's just to say that we look forward to working with you, and we hope that we make a good choice here. And so we expect that we have.
Yeah.
So we look forward to verifying to other counties that we have made a really good choice.
Yeah, I think that's well put. You know, and we work hard to deserve the reputation we have and, enjoy the relationship already. And, I was saying to, Commissioner Klusman, how involved everybody has been and how positive, and we're already, making great progress. So to us, it's a perfect match, to be honest with you. So you should expect good things.
Well, if it goes well and we are instrumental in bringing other communities around us on board, then we'll have to work out some kind of commission deal.
Absolutely. Yeah, let me make sure you have, I didn't have a chance to.
Yeah, they're not in there.
Okay. So really, these guys are, you own them, okay? They'll deliver on whatever is needed, and if they can, if they can, they'll get you to somebody who can, and I'm the backstop, so don't be afraid to call if need be. Okay,
In our 24-hour, 365 guy,
right?
Zach, raise your hand. Even
Hi, Zach.
even at 3 a.m.
Okay,
All right, thank you.
thanks so much. We appreciate your confidence.
All right, Valerie.
Good afternoon. I'm Valerie. I'm with Rowan County Transit and the airport. Today, we have a public hearing in reference to applications for the fiscal year 23 grants. I know we're living in 3 different years, but 23 is the year we now need to apply for grants for. So the purpose of this meeting is to allow our county to have a public comment period. The Board of Commissioners is the only applicant for grant funding, so approval is necessary from you all in order for us to go through with the application process. Applications are due no later than October 8th this year. And again, the public hearing is to allow residents of the community an opportunity to speak on our Rowan transit system and our grant applications. 5311 is the Community Transportation Program. This grant helps to cover administrative costs, including salaries, travel, communication, utilities, advertising, and the secured parking lot that we rent from the school system. We're requesting $250,300. That's an 85% grant with a 15% county match. The next one is 5310, that's state rural. This helps with enhanced mobility of seniors and individuals with disabilities, specifically RVO, TLC, and dialysis rural. For this one, we're requesting $385,000. It's a 50-50 match. This comes from contract revenue, and if we get it, our OAP funds, we still don't know if that's going to be available to us in 2023. Just briefly, RVO, for those that aren't aware of what they do, it's a nonprofit rehab facility providing work adjustment, vocational training, and long-term employment and life skills for people with intellectual or developmental disabilities. They have a daily schedule. There's various program options depending on their interest and abilities, and they do receive a biweekly paycheck for their efforts. Trinity Living Center is a community-based adult day care service for the needs of elderly and functionally and or cognitively impaired adults. They also have daily activities. When able, they have planned outings. There's nutritional support, and they also have the Whirlpool Spa for some therapeutic treatments. In the pictures, you can see they have animal days where they bring out pet therapy, birthday parties, art events, just various things to get people active during their day stay there, so they're not just sitting there. And DaVita Dialysis provides patients with integrated care regardless of the stage they are in their kidney disease. Most of the transport RTS does is for someone to go receive dialysis either on a weekly or biweekly basis. We do have a wait list still, and we are working on getting rid of that wait list. That's one of our goals, is to not have anyone in our county waiting for their dialysis. Combined capital, that will be used to fund the replacement of 2 raised roof vans and 1 20-foot light transit vehicle. The 20-foot will be better for us than the 22-foot. 2 feet doesn't sound like much, but when you're going down driveways and picking up people at various locations where there's less access points to turn around, it's very helpful. For that one, we are requesting $211,520. That is a 90% grant, so a 10% county match. This is an item that's not guaranteed. We have to apply and then see what DOT comes back with. They could say 1, they could say 2, or they could allow us to get all 3. And this is a difficult one because deliveries may be delayed. We're still waiting on the ones we ordered for FY21 to come in because of the chip shortage. The next group is 10, and then these would be 3. So we're going to be, our whole fleet, almost half of it will be waiting on replacements. The marker for that is 100,000 miles is when they consider the vehicle has reached its usable life and you can try to get a replacement. So the total we're asking to apply for is $846,820. The county match is $58,697. All grant agreements come back in front of the board for acceptance. Once we receive the package, it comes on the consent agenda. You get to see it, agree if you want it, and ensure that funding is still available. Then once approved, it can be signed. There's 3 action items for this. The first we're doing right now, conducting a public hearing for FY23 transportation applications. So if there's any comments from the public.
We'll do that.
Do that at the end. Okay. Action item 2 would be to approve RTS to complete and submit applications for the grants presented. And action item 3 is to adopt the CTP Public Transportation Program Resolution. This identifies the county manager as the authorized official to make the necessary federal and state assurances and sign NCDOT grant agreements. It also indicates the county attorney must also affirm that they have the authority under state and local law to make and comply with the certifications and assurances. So those are the 3 items.
58,000 budget. 22.
23.
22, 23.
Yeah, we have to apply now for the FY23 that would not start till next. It's mind boggling. You're living in 3 years in transit. That's what I'm trying to get used to. So. Yeah, but if approved, we would budget that amount to ensure we had the matching funds available.
All right, any other questions for Valerie? If not, we'll open the floor to public for a public hearing. If there's anyone that would like to make comment. Yes, now would be the time. All right, seeing none, hearing none. April, anyone from you?
Is anyone joining us remotely? If you'd like to speak, if you can use the raise your hand feature within the Zoom application, we will recognize you for public comment.
All right, hearing none, we'll close the public hearing, and we have a motion to approve fiscal year 23 transportation grant application.
So moved.
Second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Thank you, Valerie. Appreciate it.
You have to do the motion for the CTP as well. Is that separate?
3 things.
And we have a motion to adopt the community transportation program resolution.
So moved.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Was there a third thing? Were there 3 action items? Oh, okay.
Is Shane or Ed?
Both of them.
I can't. Oh, there's Ed. Ed? Go. Welcome.
So this particular item is a continuation of the public hearing the board held at its last meeting. They tabled, or you tabled a decision, and opted to continue the hearing until another meeting. And we put the item back on the agenda. Hadn't been re-advertised, so we would encourage you not to accept any additional public comment. The same material that was in the previous report from staff is there in your packet. We've got the same presentation if you'd like to see it again, but we really haven't prepared anything different. The application stands as it was on August 16th. So I think at this point, the county attorney may want to weigh in on it, but there's really, the deliberation is up to the board how to proceed with the request.
We've closed the public hearing, and so now I think it's just up to you to discuss the substance of what you recall from the hearing. Review recommendations of staff and the staff report and the prior action of the planning board, and determine what you would like to do with regard to the statements of consistency and reasonableness, and whether you deny or approve the rezoning. So substantively and procedurally, that's sort of where you are.
All right, commissioners, any discussion on this? Questions? We're finishing discussion and debate on strictly the zoning requests from last time. We do have a temporary use permit scheduled for 6 o'clock. Well, I would move that we deny Z05-27. Planning board recommendation was to do the same, and they found it's not consistent with the East Rowan land use plan based on the following. It's an expansion of business that would conflict with surrounding residential uses. And the proposed use would be a benefit to the owner at the expense of neighbors or community in regards to the noise and traffic. Ed, is that appropriate still? Is that statement one that we need to adopt here?
Yes, you need to adopt the statements. If you adopt them consistent with what the planning board did, then what you're doing is appropriate.
That's the only statement that I see.
Yeah.
Are there others?
So the statement can be the statements can be combined. So that's kind of what the outcome of the planning board's document was. But yeah, I mean, that was the content of their material. So if the board heard anything else that maybe wasn't addressed in that statement, then I would encourage you to talk about it and add to it. I mean, that's not the only statement that can be adopted.
Are there other statements that were provided? I'm on page 6 of the staff report. Are there
Not from the planning board, no, sir. No.
So they just combined the two into one, and if you agree with their assessment, you may adopt it as a combined statement as well.
Are you?
Yes.
We have a second. Is there any other discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So we'll pick this back up as a temporary use on at 6 o'clock. All right, we'll move on. Shane, number 5, we'll have a quasi-judicial hearing for Taylor Clay products. So I'm required by law to read this. The hearing for consideration of SUP 02-21 is now in session. We'll focus on an application submitted by Bryce Evans on behalf of Taylor Clay Products for a 7,875 square foot building expansion on tax parcel 408-020 located at 1225 Chuck Taylor Lane. If you feel that any member of the board may have a conflict of interest in hearing the case, please address the board now prior to any testimony or information being presented. When the board enters into deliberation to decide the case, no further testimony may be presented. The board will render one of the following 3 decisions. 1, approve the temporary or approve the permit as requested or with additional conditions. 2, continue the request. Or 3rd, deny the request. All parties who plan to testify in this case may come forward and be sworn in. Those who testify must state their name and address at the podium for the benefit of the board's clerk. All material presented must be given to the clerk and will become part of the record. This board can only accept sworn testimony. No hearsay evidence is admissible. Shane.
Shane Stewart, Rowan County Planning Office, 402 North Main Street, Salisbury. As the chairman read, this is a special use permit for a small expansion at the Taylor Clay facility, 1225 Chuck Taylor. And if you look on the map here, you'll see the property outlined in yellow. Total's about 29 acres. It's adjacent to another 39 owned by Taylor Clay. You see Chuck Taylor Lane here as it meets up with Peeler Road. It's bordered on the west by the North Carolina Railroad. Taking a look at the site plan presented, this is the overall. You can see it's rotated 1 click clockwise. This is north in this direction here. So this will be Chuck Taylor and the railroad. We're going to focus on this small portion of the site there in that corner. Represents about a 105 by 75 expansion for 7875 in total. You see the nearest dimension here to the neighboring property line is 110 feet, and that is also owned by Taylor Clay. If you add the 2 together, the distance to the nearest adjoining property is 220 feet away, which is the Cabarrus concrete facility. Looking at the current aerial photography, this is from earlier in the year. This represents that rectangle, the nearest property corner here. In your packet, the site plan does have what appears to be a historic overview of the original site, maybe as it developed in the last number of decades. But when you compare the 2, it doesn't look like the parking really matches up. But really, for the purpose of this request, it's not that important because no additional staff members or employees are proposed to be added. So this is literally just an expansion to accommodate additional volume and no additional employees added, and therefore no parking required by the ordinance. Take a little further look out. You see the nearest uses, walk-on products. This is in the Salisbury city limits zoned heavy industrial. Cabarrus concrete here on this neighboring tract. This is the Taylor Clay site on a different parcel. Same tract we spoke of earlier, the 29 acres in red this time, and the Catawba Solar facility. Of course, all this property here, the 400 and some acres, we affectionately refer to as the Platinum site, so we all know about it. Zone 85 ED2. So from the zoning map we saw earlier, all the districts involved, you have industrial, CBI, ED2, ED3, light and heavy industrial by the city, and then an expansion tucked in this small corner here. This, of course, will be the 3rd special use permit granted at the facility. The board may recall anytime you have a brand new operation that requires a special use permit or expand, you got to repeat this process. So we did such in 02 and 06 for brick kilns, and a large expansion back in '06. So this will be the third expansion. Real quick on the land use plan, you see the color purple here predominant through the area. So we're largely in the commercial industrial designation, and also equally as important between 29 and 85, both having quarter overlays, which specifically references commercial, industrial, and heavy impact uses that are rail dependent. So they do have rail deliveries there at the facility too. As our typical procedure, send notices out, didn't receive any phone calls from adjoining landowners. And our typical approach, findings of fact, you do have some staff example findings for consideration. So 3 motions there and 1 for the overall request. And of course, Mr. Evans is here if you have any questions of him as the contractor. Any questions of the board? That is if necessary. It's just more of a disclaimer if you wanted to, but it's not required.
All right, any questions for Shane? This is good news. No, all of y'all, I'm sure Craig has taken that facility. Tell you, the owner would love to give you a tour, and it is a remarkable facility. So do yourself a favor and give him a call and say you'd like to tour his plant. It is something else. All right, thanks, Shane. Anything from the applicant?
If there's no questions, I don't have anything to add.
All right, good. All right, is there anyone else that was, I think it was maybe just 2 of you that were sworn in? We'll go ahead and suppose there's anyone else that is going to speak on this. It's been sworn in. So we'll go ahead and close the hearing. And we have 3 findings that are in front of us. Commissioner Green, would you propose those to us in the form of a motion?
I'd like to make this motion that the development of the property in accordance with the proposed conditions will not materially endanger the public health or safety.
Second.
That the development of the property in accordance with the proposed conditions will not substantially injure the value of adjoining or abutting property, or that the development is a public necessity.
Craig seconded the first one. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, then the second one, Craig second.
Second.
Second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And the third is that the location and the character of the development in accordance with the proposed conditions will be in general harmony with the area in which it is located and in general conformity with any adopted county plans.
Second.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, do we have a motion to approve SUP 02-21?
So moved.
All right, Craig and Judy, you got to be quicker. Craig and Jim, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. And please thank everyone for their expansion in Rowan County. We do appreciate it.
I'm sure Mr. Taylor will be happy. Thank you, guys.
Good, good. All right, home funding increase. Ed?
Yes, sir. Thank you. This is just an attempt to formally acknowledge that the horse is in fact in front of the cart with this program. In 2019, the commission did conduct a public hearing for its home grant application. The amount that was advertised was about $147,000. Shortly thereafter, we received notice that the funding had increased to $192,000. And the budget the budget amendment was incorporated into the budget. The application was received, but we just didn't conduct another public hearing. And at the time, we weren't told that we needed to. We did a similar thing this past year due to some changes. So what we're doing is we're going back and just saying, hey, we do have this money. We're using it for the same process we were going to before. We advertised this public hearing as well as gave folks the opportunity to want to comment via the website to the clerk. And I don't think she's received any notices. So I think we're all happy if we can conduct our public hearing, we'll move forward.
All right, we'll open the floor
Thank
for
you.
the public hearing. Our intent is to approve $192,081. If anyone would like to speak for or against, please come forward now. April? If there's anyone.
Yes, anyone joining us remotely, if you can use the raise your hand feature. I do not see anyone, Mr. Chairman.
All right, then we'll close the public hearing. Commissioners, do we have a motion to approve the 1920 home funding increase for a total of $192,081?
So moved.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Jane.
Mr. Doug Foley has a SNIA permit request. I think the board's very familiar with those, but one thing you might not know about. Mr. Foley just recently completed the newest small industrial park out the west. It's about a 7-lot park. The board may remember rezoning a small portion out that way off Shin Farm Road a couple years ago. So Mr. Foley purchased it and developed that, put a new road in, and this will be the first developed lot in that park. So what you see before you is a 12,000 square foot building here. And right now it'll start off as a shell building, but they do know the intended use is just trying to get that started. It'll be upfitted as a race shop for part of it and then storage for a couple customers. So with that said, it does need an intensity allocation by the designation of the industrial classification a couple of years ago. I think it was envisioned that this would definitely be needed. Plenty of allocation still available, but it just does require approval. And each time subsequent, when projects come forward, site plans will come to this board. Any questions?
Applicant here, does you want to say anything?
Yes, sir.
How are you?
Hey, good.
Good. I just wanted to attend to make sure that I knew the process. This is the first time doing a commercial. I built a lot of residential stuff in your county. I built Red Cedar Farm on 152 and several others, but this is my first commercial project. I actually bought that land just so I could build my own race shop, and then looked at the property and really kind of fell in love with it. And so that's why we named it Horsepower Park and Nitro Valley and all of that. I drive professionally in drag racing. And so it's, I appreciate your ability to review this. And we plan on building a total of 7 buildings in there. Primarily in the kind of in the fabrication, drag racing type of, or not drag racing, but racing in type of, I'm on Gateway. I've been on Gateway for years. And our goal here is to try and kind of step it up a notch as far as the exterior look of the buildings, awnings, some more type of landscaping, and just try and bring something up that's maybe some of the other steel buildings that are out there kind of lack a little bit.
Thank you for investing in Rowan. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
We wish you the best.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, do we have a motion to approve SNIA 06-21?
So
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Mr. Chair, can I ask one point of order on the, for clarification on the item for the home funding increase? While you conducted the hearing, can I also get the consensus that the board authorized the county manager and related staff to sign the annual agreement on behalf of Rowan County?
Yeah, thank you, Ed.
Thank you.
Do we have a motion to authorize the county manager and related staff to sign the annual agreement on behalf of Rowan County?
So moved.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Ed. Sorry. Got all excited. All right, we have the budget amendments were provided for us. Do we have a motion to approve budget?
So moved.
Greg and Mike, motion second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, we have some board improvements. Central Line Workforce Development Board. Board recommended that Desiree Dunstan be appointed to replace a previous member. Motion and a second to approve that.
So moved.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
JCPC, Carl Dangerfield applied to fill the vacant seat for a member of the business community. Motion and a second, please.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Local Emergency Planning Committee, Josh, how do you pronounce that guy's last?
You don't want me to pronounce it.
Bergeron. Josh Bergeron applied to fill a vacant media seat. Alyssa Harris applied to fill a vacant seat for Environmental Health and Transportation, and Michael Hedrick with the Department of with NCDOT applied to fill another vacant seat for Environmental Health and Transportation. Do we have a motion to approve those three?
So moved.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Rowan County Planning Board, Greg handled his first term on the planning board expires September 30th. He's applied for reappointment. There is one other applicant. There's no other vacancies at this time.
Make a motion for Greg Henry.
All right. motion
Second.
for Greg and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
That's all on that. So we will just recess until 6 o'clock. Welcome back. It's good to see everybody. We have been in recess since our 3 o'clock meeting. We've been in recess since about 4. Our county attorney raised a point of order regarding our zoning hearing for Z05-21. The board needs to make some findings to support that motion to adopt our statements of consistency and reasonableness. And so I need to provide some of those. I read what the planning board had done, but we need to support those with some findings of fact. So under the question of consistency, the request for CBI rezoning is not consistent with I-85 South Corridor Plan commentary that more separation is needed between residential uses and business and industrial uses. Likewise, the request is not consistent with the East Rowan Land Use Plan recommendation that proposals for expansion of existing businesses that minimize conflict with surrounding residential uses through design standards or impact mitigation techniques are encouraged in the planning area. So that's under statement of consistency. Under statement of reasonableness, the surrounding area is predominantly residential. The planning board's adopted statement of consistency and reasonableness says, quote, Z05-21 is not consistent with the East Rowan Land Use Plan based on the following, and it's an expansion of business that would conflict with surrounding residential uses, and the proposed use would be a benefit to the owner at the expense of neighbors in the community in regards to noise and traffic. If changed to CBI, 3 of the applicant's proposed uses for the property are compatible with the RA district, but the proposed use as an amusement and recreation services is not allowed in the RA district, and lack of sufficient road frontage for the applicant's property would limit the non-residential structure square footage to 2,000. If permits had been obtained, the property is not in compliance with RA standards now. So what we're doing is, again, this has to do with the original zoning application. We denied that at the 3 o'clock meeting today. So I will offer those up as findings to support the statement of consistency and a statement of reasonableness. Do I have a second? All right, any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, so a couple things in this meeting. So that was just kind of cleaning up some stuff from our zoning meeting at 3 o'clock. So what we're going to do now is a couple of things I want to tell the audience that's with us today. We've got some technical issues with the projector. things feed through the pulpit here and then connect to the projector. And so if there's anything that's going to be shown from here, we will be able to see it, but the audience will be able to see it. Now, if you want to see if there's presentation, then you can actually zoom in and see it on your cell phone if you want to do that. But I just wanted to let you know that that's the reason why there won't be anything here, because it's physically, we're physically not able to do it right now. So what we will take on now is we'll ask Ed, your planning director, to come forward, and we'll take on then the TEMP O-21 Reaper's Realm haunted house and trail. So this is for the temporary permit. Ed?
Thank you. For those of you that didn't want to zoom in to the meeting, I made some hard copies. I think there's 10 of the staff presentation, and there's 10 of the applicant's presentation there. So if you want to take a look at that, if not, that's fine. So this is the courtesy hearing for the temporary 0121 request submitted for Reaper's Realm to operate a haunted house and trail. I think most of us are familiar with the site location. It's located east of China Grove and Landis between Old Lynn and Doherty Road. It consists of tax parcel or tax map 147, parcels 1, 4, 6, 116, and then the access via Shuffler Woods Road, which is parcel 145. The property is currently zoned RA. Again, the request is for a haunted house and trail for 15 days in 2021 only. As a follow-up to our hearing that we had for the rezoning application on August 16th, staff that consisted of planning, the assistant county manager, the fire marshal, the building inspections director, and a couple of representatives from the North Carolina Department of Labor visited the site. And the primary goal there was to identify which structures had obtained a permit and which ones should have obtained a permit that were part of the haunt, if you will. The structures were numbered based on something that our staff had put together. And when we had a name to identify the proposed or the, excuse me, the current use, it's identified there. This is what would have been termed the lower section of the property. You can see that structure 1.0 is identified as the haunted house, and it had obtained building plans, a building permit, an electrical permit, and a fire inspection, and those were all approved. As we go down the list, we look at 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4, 2.0, and 4.0. Those had not obtained permits nor plan review. And it was the opinion of the building inspections director, Mr. Thomas O'Kelly, that those structures in their current state would require each of those types of permitting. I think you'll hear a little bit later on that in the applicant's proposed conditions that they would remove structure 1.1 and they would padlock structure 4.0 on this site plan. So looking north, this would be the upper section. 4 again is that one that was proposed to be padlocked, but you would see that the plans there would be required, building permit needed, electrical permit needed, and a fire inspection needed. As we go down the list, you can see that the asylum did receive building plan review. That's going to be the structure 6.0 through 6.3. The adjacent structure 6.4, the applicant has indicated they would padlock. Likewise, 7.1 would be padlocked, 7.2, which is the scanning building and 7.3, the mine shaft. Both those two latter structures would be demolished. But overall, the applicant was very upfront, allowed us to see the sites, took us on a tour. And so the information, again, as determined by our chief building inspector, was that a significant majority of the structures on site had not been permitted appropriately. And following that, we sent a follow-up letter to Mr. Jenkins and his attorney and just advised him of what the status of that was, what our plan review and the expedited plan review process was if he chose to go that route. So when we look at the application, again, the applicant has asked for 15 days starting September 24th. The dates are there in front of you. They're mostly Fridays and Saturdays. There is one Thursday and 2 Sundays. The hours are 6:30 to 12:30 a.m. on most of those dates. The applicant has stated in their narrative that the site would close at 12 and they would hope to have everybody out of the venue by 12:30. And the same thing happening on the Thursdays and Sundays. They'd close at 10 and try to get everybody out by 10:30. This is a very small rendering of the site plan. You guys do have in your Novus packet a little bit better opportunity to view that. You will note that there is no access via Old Lynn Road. It's a very close representation of what is on the ground now, with the exception of some additional parking. The conditions that were proposed by staff are these that I'm going to go over here, and they're in your report as well. First is close operation and have attendees off the premises by midnight, have an ambulance on site for the Halloween season, and provide us a contract or the executed contract with Rowan Rescue Squad, have at least 5 deputies or law enforcement officers on site, as well as the private security guard. We're interested in seeing the proof and amount of liability insurance. DOL needs to inspect and approve the use of the vortex, which he has on site. The 6th criteria here was related to the decibel measurements. Given the rezoning application was denied, I don't think there's any need to have that item required, since it doesn't appear that they will be continuing operation here. Number 7, I think this kind of goes without saying that all necessary building and fire code related plan reviews and permits and inspections for the structures used in the haunt need to happen before the 2021 season occurs. Carryover from the previous permit, parking needs to be provided on site and not along Daugherty Road or Shuffler Wood Road. The applicant has indicated that they would provide an emergency access lane on Shuffler Wood Road, which is important. Boston Heights, as well as the fire marshal, referenced this in their commentary at our public hearing for the zoning hearing. This temporary use is for the 2021 season only, and no other 1 or 2 day public events are allowed. No alcohol sales allowed on site by the owners or others. This vortex requirement is a duplication. Fire marshal to inspect and obtain fire code compliance. And we would request that the Jenkins family stipulate to these conditions in writing. And you guys sort of know that you have broad authority in approving or considering denying this particular permit application. You can modify, delete, or supplement any of these conditions suggested by the applicant. You're going to hear from him in just a minute, or these recommended by staff, if you're so inclined to allow them to operate this season. I think in determining whether to issue the permit, approve, deny, or table, the condition should satisfy the findings in section 21-281-2, which state the first is the use will not endanger the public health, safety, or general welfare. The second, the use will not have a substantial negative impact on adjoining properties. And 3, the use will not be approved for a specific period of time to exceed 2 years. Again, this is a courtesy hearing. The notices that were provided to the adjoining property owners and those that had made contact with us, let them know that there would be 10 minutes for the applicant to make their case, and the same would be allotted for the public. And so once the board has done that, it's the typical process. You discuss the findings, any conditions, and then make a decision. So I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Ed, does the county have any authority to enter the premises should they get this permit at any time during operating hours?
I mean, we would be allowed to access the property to inspect for compliance with the conditions.
So while it's operating?
Yeah, and the typical process would be is we would reach out to the owner, to make those accommodations. But during regular business operations, we can go on the property just to inspect for conditions.
Okay, thanks.
Ed, are we giving him sufficient amount of time to get permits between now and that date? I'm just not familiar with the time on permitting.
That's a good question. I think the majority of what, and let me say this, I don't have anything to do with inspections. So I'm speaking from my perspective. But I think the majority of the items that he has that will cause him some delay are plan review. And not necessarily plan review, but having engineered plans provided to the inspections department for review. Once those are approved, I would anticipate that the issuance of permits and inspections happens pretty quickly. But that would be a question that only Mr. O'Kelly could answer.
Mr. O'Kelly is joining us remotely. I don't know if he wishes to speak on this matter.
Thomas, do you have anything to add?
Give him just a moment. I hit allow talk and promoted him to panelist, so we'll see if he wishes to speak. Not seeing any indication on his end. He may be experiencing technical difficulties.
All right, anything else, Fred? All right. Yes. All right, so we've already had public comments on the prior zoning issue. So we kind of know what's going on. Almost do everything. So we opted to limit our talk here tonight, so we wouldn't do another midnight deal. So we're going to have 10 minutes available to the applicant or his representative. And then we're going to, following that, we'll have 10 minutes for public comment. So however you want to divide that up, we're trying to make it fair and give equal representation to each side, but it's going to be a total of 10 minutes. So I think to be fair, we would do 5 minutes for each side. Fair, James? Okay to do?
I think that their understanding was 10 minutes for each side.
Here, applicant commission comments, 10 minutes, and then public comment, 10 minutes. So,
Yeah.
So we're thinking 10 minutes per.
Yeah, so 10 minutes for the applicant, 10 minutes for the neighborhood. And I believe the neighborhood is consolidating all their comments with their legal counsel, Mr. Yeoman.
All right.
So we really should only have two speakers for 10 minutes each.
That's
Yeah.
okay. Yeah. Welcome back. Good to see you.
Good to be here. Thank you for hearing me again. I've got a 5 or 6 minute presentation, and then I'll turn it over to TJ. My name is Albert Benshoff, BENSHOFF, the Bro Law Firm, Concord, North Carolina. I have and you can see the screen that I can see, correct? Okay. The handout contains the application, the Jenkins proposed conditions, the staff's conditions in the front. If you flip over to the 8th page, please, I'll start there. And let's see. At Mr. D's suggestion, we are suggesting to you that you add 2 conditions if it's approved. The first condition is the applicant will not apply for another temporary use permit at the Shufflerwood Roads properties. So if approved, this will be the last time that Reaper's Realm operates at this property. The other suggested condition, again per JD's, is that the applicant will consent to signing a temporary restraining order so that if the conditions are violated, Mr. D's can get a temporary restraining order with pretty quickly and stop the operation. As Mr. Muir explained, there are 3 findings that the commission needs to make to grant a temporary use permit. And I'm going to spend the next few minutes talking about how the conditions speak to and answer these criteria, these conditions that you have to find to issue a TUP. This is a table of explaining which conditions show that the proposed use will not endanger the public safety, health, and welfare. And these conditions also apply to the next finding, but they include hiring the 5 law enforcement officers and 5 private security guards, having a contract with Rowan Rescue, and they will provide an ambulance and a crew on site, proof of liability insurance coverage. Mr. Jenkins will widen Shufflerwoods Road to 2 lanes, 24 feet, and 1 lane will be for emergency vehicles. He's consented to obtain the NC Department of Labor permit for the Vortex. Of course, the buildings open to the public have to meet the building and fire code requirements. And as I mentioned, Mr. Jenkins will consent to a TRO in advance. Continuing on with how the use will not endanger public health, safety, or welfare. Our applicants' conditions 5, 6, and 7, these were imposed
Hold on.
last year after the incident in September. There will be no walk-in customers. There will be no drop-offs. There will be no unescorted minors. They must be accompanied by an adult 18 years or older. There will be no remote ticket sales. So the attendance will be closely monitored. The site will meet the county noise ordinance. The parking will all be on site. Again, the fire marshal will inspect and permit, and no alcohol sales. I'd like to point out that there was one incident in 10 years, that was in 2020. There was no incident after late September 2020 when the extra security guards were provided and when the protocol for entering was changed. No walk-in customers, no advanced ticket sales, no unescorted minors. All of this applies to your finding that the proposed use will not have a substantial negative impact on the adjoining properties. It doesn't say, your ordinance does not say no impact. It says substantial. The temporary use permit will be issued for 15 days. There will be no 2022 or 2023 season per the applicant's condition. The Jenkins suggests splitting the baby on the hour of closing, and they ask if they could stay open till 12:30 on weekend nights, but the noise will be turned off at midnight, and the extra 30 minutes is just for people to leave. There will, of course, be no alcohol sales. Coming over from conditions from the CBI rezoning, there is a lighting plan. The parking lots will be lit. The lights will all be directed inward, away from the property lines. There is a fire plan in effect. There is a sanitation plan, if you remember that from the CBI hearing, and they are also detailed on pages 4, 5, and 6 in the front of the packet. Again, to reduce the impact on the neighbors, no walk-in customers, no drop-offs, no unescorted minors. The site will meet the county noise ordinance. The parking will be on site. And again, we offer an advance consented temporary restraining order. The third finding you have to make is kind of a gimme. It's that the use is for an approved specific period of time. This use would be for a very specific period, would be perhaps 2 days in September and 13 days in October. And the page 15 in your handout are the Rowan County staff conditions, and the yellow shows the ones we consented to. On the 14th condition, it says that Tony and Angela Jenkins should consent to these conditions in writing. That's a requirement of conditional district rezoning. This is not conditional district rezoning, but it's there, and we don't strenuously object to that one. I'll be happy to answer any questions, or I'll turn it over to Mr. Jenkins. And I misspoke. The Rowan County staff conditions, the page on the screen, that's at page 7 in your handout, not 15.
I'll let Al talk about all the paperwork part. I've been here 10 years. Last year I was standing in this exact place applying for a temporary use permit. In front of you, you granted my temporary use permit last year with less conditions than we've applied for this year.
Not a neighbor showed up last year for the meeting, and no one showed up last year to contest us. I feel like the CBI has brought all of this on us. Y'all have told me numerous times y'all didn't hold us responsible for what happened on opening night last year, that we probably couldn't even have prevented it. So if that's the case, we've never had a complaint on public safety at our event ever, other than that one night. So if I'm not held responsible for that one night, and I think Mr. Eds may have said that at one of the meetings, I'm being held responsible for that anyway, even though we've never had a complaint. We've never had 911. We've never had EMS be called to our site, never had to have anything for any issues except for that one night. But we're being held to that one night, even though we've been told numerous times that that really wasn't our fault or we could have stopped it. We have tried to add every condition we could, more sheriffs, more security fences, everything since then, and we had no issues. The issues of traffic, most of the neighbors that are here are from Old Lynn Road. We've never had traffic on Old Lynn Road. We've never allowed people to come in off of Old Lynn Road. We've only had traffic on Darty Road. Last year, we had a sheriff standing at the end of the road after the first night to make sure we didn't have cars in the road. That was his job, to make sure we did not block the road. So I would be glad to answer any questions that y'all have at the end.
Thank you. All right, who's next?
I think that would be me.
Okay.
My name's Rick Yeoman. I'm an attorney next door over in Iredell County, and I'm here on behalf of the group of neighbors who obviously oppose this temporary use permit for Reaper's Realm. As an introductory matter, I would point out that we've talked about the temporary use permit that was granted in 2020. Reviewing the paperwork for that particular temporary use permit, it appears that in granting the permit last year, Reaper's Realm was instructed to seek permanent zoning. I know they did that. I know that was denied earlier today. But it was apparent to me in reading the documentation that the board really didn't plan to allow further temporary use permits in directing them to apply for a permanent zoning change. Obviously, we're here again with another request, but we would certainly take the position that the temporary permit could be denied on that basis alone, as it is against the board's 2020 directive. Some of these slides I'm going to move through very quickly, realizing that many of these things have been talked about ad nauseum already today, and I apologize that I'm adding to that. This slide, of course, is the criteria that have been talked about. I don't think we need to discuss that further. What we're going to be focusing on today are these 4 points: dangers to the public health, safety, and welfare, negative impact on the neighborhood, which we contend is substantial. This idea of temporary versus permanent, and then the repeated and flagrant non-compliance with the prior orders and directives of this very board. And you may ask why that's important. Our position is that what's past is prologue. The best evidence of what we can expect from any conditions that the board would place on Reaper's Realm today is what's gone on in the past. And what we've seen in the past is just blatant disregard for the conditions and the directives provided by this board. This has already been discussed as well, but if we're going to talk about public health, safety, and welfare, certainly any buildings that are on site, don't have approved building plans, don't have building permits, don't have electrical permits, don't have the appropriate fire inspection. How can you possibly argue that that's consistent with the public health, safety, and welfare? There are some changes in the requested temporary permit application that address the traffic issues. I did want to point out the event that we're all familiar with that happened back in September of last year with the shooting where the emergency services vehicles had significant difficulty reaching the site because of the way the site is set up, and only one location where there's ingress or egress. Emergency service vehicles are often unable to reach the site. Emergency personnel must walk in. And even if the emergency personnel can make it to the site, there's no place for them to park. Either they're going to be blocking people trying to exit the facility, or people trying to exit are going to be blocking the emergency vehicles trying to get in. Which is another factor that cuts against the idea of public health, safety, and welfare. If I might address the neighborhood impact shortly, I'm sure you're aware of the petition that was signed by 156 neighbors against the proposed zoning changes. I understand that we're here for something a little bit different tonight, but the concerns that resulted in that petition apply to the temporary request as well. This is a large commercial enterprise. It makes a lot of noise, generates trash, results in property damage. We've got patrons of Reaper's Realm Park that trespass on neighboring property. There have been circumstances where people have gone on neighbors' property and to urinate while waiting. Parking along the road there causes ruts and other damage to the neighbor's property. And it's a general intrusion into the neighbor's privacy, into their sense of security. The police have been called multiple times to deal with patrons. There was a drunk patron knocking on neighbors' windows. And then, of course, we had the incident with patrons firing shots into the air from a pickup truck. I don't want to spend a lot of time, because we don't have a lot of time on the temporary versus permanent, but I would point out that we're talking about a temporary use permit for an outfit that by its own admission has been operating for 10 years. This is the third temporary permit that's been requested. Of those 10 years, there's only 3 years that have been permitted in any way, shape, or form. And the rest of the time, they've been operating outside the local ordinances and outside the law, which we would argue is unacceptable. In 2017, when the first temporary application was granted, there were a list of 6 conditions that were provided. We're going to get into this a little more here in the next couple of minutes, but I think from the earlier slide that showed permitting issues with the various buildings, it is very clear that items 2 and 3 were not met. Too many of the buildings were unpermitted. Too many had not had the inspection by the fire marshal. And had the buildings approved by the fire marshal. Operations were supposed to be limited to Fridays and Saturdays until midnight. That condition was repeatedly violated. And again, why is this important? Why the applicant wants to spend time talking about new conditions and how the behavior is going to change. The reason we're focusing on the past is because the past and how they have reacted or how they have approached the conditions that have been given by this board in the past is the very best evidence on how we can expect them to do so going forward. And that's why I think these issues are important. Some other examples. The permit in 2017 was to last for 2 years. It was covering periods of time in September and October. Specifically, we're supposed to involve Halloween, turned into a Halloween carnival. Something very different happened than what was anticipated and what was granted by this board. In addition to Halloween, there were activities that occurred. Take 2018, for example. My Bloody Valentine weekends in February, St. Patrick's Day events in March, mud bogs during the summer. Some of these activities continued into 2019 and 2020, despite the fact that there was no permitting period for those years. Other conditions that weren't met over time, having 5 county or municipal law enforcement officers. Mr. Jenkins admitted in prior hearings that there were times that he was unable to meet that condition. Leaving the site by midnight, repeatedly violated. And we can look at the Reaper's Realm own Facebook site for multiple examples of that was the case. They would, according to their site, sell tickets until midnight. If it takes an hour to get through, there was no way those things people were through and out by midnight. I'm going to leave the PowerPoint. I will answer any questions that the board has, but ultimately, out of all the years Reaper's Realm has been in operation, they got temporary zoning twice, 3 seasons. So 7 seasons they operated without permitting of any kind. They have had years to get everything in compliance, to get new zoning, to move to a new location. For whatever reason, they've chosen not to do that. And what they're asking is for the neighbors there around Reaper's Realm to again bear the brunt. And we would simply ask that not be permitted, that this petition be denied. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, our next task, according to our kind of map of how we handle this, is for us to discuss findings and conditions, and then lastly to grant, deny, or table the temporary permit 01-21. Any comments?
A question.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's Fred or Jay, but I was looking, staff had here number 11, no alcohol sales. I think, it was my understanding last meeting, we were told there was no alcohol on the property. And then I guess the county found alcohol had been sold. Do we have any of that information?
About alcohol sales on the property during last year's event?
In the past?
In the past, I don't recall anything during a Halloween, but I think there was beer on the site for St. Patrick's Day.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there has been alcohol sold, it's just was sold by third party?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think they've been open about that. They've been open about that there was beer on site for St. Patrick's Day and it was sold by a local brewery.
Jay, how does that differ? I don't understand that. If you have an outside entity to come specifically to sell alcohol on your property, but you don't need a permit, even though they're on your property? I don't get it.
I don't know the ABC rules. I really don't. I just don't know that. I think the general the general note was no alcohol to be sold, whether it's third party or not third party.
You can ask a question. If you want to come up, yeah.
The way breweries work is they have to buy a event license, which allows them to go to events, fairs, any events like that to sell their brewery. And they take the money. We didn't charge them a spot. We didn't charge them anything. We didn't make a dime off the beer. We only had them there. They bought a green beer for St. Patrick's Day. Was why we had a brewery there. And they obtained an ABC permit and was checked out by the ABC. And they have a special event license to sell beer at fairs and other places. It's not just us.
Your turn, yeah.
Sorry, I could turn my mic off. Mr. Benshaw, got a couple of questions. Okay, so on the staff conditions on page 7, where you've agreed to having 5 municipal or county law officers and 5 private certified on-site during operating hours, I don't see anything that says that if those are not available, that it will not be operating.
It doesn't say that. And we proposed a condition that if we can't get 5 LEOs, that we be allowed to hire 3 private security guards for each LEO slot that isn't filled. That was our alternate condition that we suggested. But if you're asking, should all the conditions say that they have to be met? I believe that's understood. I believe that's implied.
Yeah, the conditions are implied. If he didn't have 5 LEOs from Rowan County, then he wouldn't meet the condition and couldn't operate.
So these additional private protective services people, 3 to 1, did you say? Am I understanding that right?
Yes.
If you can't get 5 law officers, you get 15, no, yeah, 15 protective services.
Yes, although it would not, I don't think it would work that way because the substitution would only be made if the LEOs, if there aren't LEOs available. So let's say there were 4 sheriff's deputies, there would be then 5 private security officers plus 3 more private security officers for a total of 8 private and 4 LEOs. And our suggested condition is on page 3, number 1.
Okay, so does this mean then that if there are no LEOs available, that the evening operations will continue?
That's the implication, but these are your conditions. You know, the staff suggested conditions, the Jenkins suggested conditions.
I understand that, but I'm just trying to understand the conditions.
That's
Because I think that the last time you were here, I had a lot of safety type questions to ask. That's why I'm trying to understand this. And the most pertinent question I think that was answered then retracted was if there weren't enough officers, if they would open. And the answer was yes, and then the answer was no.
So you're saying that the answer at the CBI hearing now applies to this hearing? Because
Well,
that's not that. you know, the board asked for this temporary use permit app, or it was a suggestion of some of you. That's why we're here.
Okay. But that's why I'm trying to understand what you're asking for. Because if you're asking us to approve a plan that will have substitutes rather than LEOs, that is a major issue.
Only if we can't get the LEOs, which is what we talked about on the 16th.
Right. And that's where I said that that is an issue to me personally. I don't know if it is for the other board members, but that's why I'm trying to understand what you have worked out here. So the answer to my question is that if there are no LEOs, but you have the other private security people that you will open.
If that's what the condition says.
Well, is it implied or does it need to be in writing?
Hey, Jay, can you?
They're proposing as their own condition that if they can't get LEOs, that they substitute 3 for 1 that they can't get. So hypothetically, if there are none available, there would be 15 additional private security guards. That's a condition that they've proposed to meet the security question. Yes.
Right. And then.
So
then
that would be 20 then.
Yes, with no arrest authority, correct?
I don't know how they're licensed. I assume
Well,
not.
if we have another shooting and there's nothing that says there can't be, then who is going to be the arrest power on site to try and apprehend and arrest?
I don't think there's ever been a case where 0 sheriff's deputies showed up. I think there's always been some.
I have 2 that's already contacted me about working this year every day.
Okay. Personally, I still want it in writing.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
I said, I don't like things that are assumed, especially when I'm working with attorneys. My attorneys always told me to get it in writing. So I would personally want to see that in the conditions. And that's why I'm trying to figure it out, why, if it's going to be all private security.
I think, Commissioner Klusman, I think you can certainly suggest that that's your requirement for a condition. We suggested 5. They've just made a proposal for an alternate. If you feel that there needs to be LEO with arrest authority on site, then that's what the board is entertaining now, is if you do think to issue the permit, you can make that a condition, that you have LEO with arrest authority on site and some minimum number attached to it.
Okay. Then I have another question. The restraining orders. So what is the process of getting a temporary restraining order? How long does it take? I mean, can you call a judge on Sunday and say, I need a temporary restraining order?
If it's been consented to by the Jenkins in advance, that would certainly make it easier, but it all depends on the availability of a judge to sign the order.
Worst case scenario is if there's a violation over the weekend, Monday morning, we would file for the injunctive relief to stop the event from occurring subsequent weekends. And the consent is designed to give the immediate restraining order subject to a full hearing later. The hardest part in obtaining that is to get the initial relief, because now you need to get the parties in court. You need to do other things to get them in there to get the temporary relief. And so it was only suggested as a means of enforcement from me, as to make it easier to get the initial relief to stop the event. But is there a judge available on a Saturday night or a Sunday? That's up to the judges and whether they're here or not. But theoretically, it would be Monday morning, yes.
Yeah. So the the condition could be violated on a Friday night and the operation will be able to continue then until Monday morning.
In the absence of a temporary restraining order, the answer is simply yes. Does that mean there aren't other intervening things that would happen? There would be a reach out to the property owner. I mean, we would obviously use other methods, but I think that you can safely, predict that Monday morning is your first chance for relief, but
Then just one more question. On page 12, top under B, would you please define substantial for me? If your client is claiming that this is not substantial negative impact.
Jay, is there any precedent in Rowan County for substantial? I don't want to interpret your zoning ordinance without giving you the chance to weigh in.
Our definitions may be different. I'm going to let you answer that.
It is more than slight. It has to do with both the amount of the negative impact and the duration of the negative impact. Is it a permanent negative impact or is it temporary? And does it affect the quality of life in a serious ongoing way?
So,
And there are cases that dwell at great length about substantial. And if I can have my slide stack from the 16th up, I've got a couple slides on it. But yes, that's a good rule of thumb definition. While I look for that.
So the event is not substantial enough to cause negative impact. It'd be fine to have it in your backyard.
I'm sorry, could you say that again, please?
I'll withdraw that question. And the other thing I'm really confused about is this part of your temporary zoning application, the map that's attached?
Yes. The site plan is required. That's the site plan. That's the site plan that Ed showed, the little tiny one. That's
Okay. No, why I'm confused is does that mean he's going to do all these things as the site plan shows?
well, most of those are already there.
Road and the parking lots and.
The Sheffield Woods Road is there. Its improvement is ongoing. The parking lots are there. The fenced area in front of the haunted house is there, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Right, other questions for applicant? The attorney?
Jay, I have a question for Jay. So under their proposed conditions, suggest a condition that they will not apply for a temporary use permit again after Sheffield Wood Road, at the Sheffield Wood Roads property. So is that legally binding for the rest of their ownership of that property? They could never come back and apply for?
it's an interesting question, the way you frame it. And in real property, and the attorneys will appreciate this, but the restriction forever and ever and ever isn't realistic. And we probably should understand that there should be a realistic time frame attached to that is enforceable. 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, whatever it is, but to leave it open-ended, never, never, forever and ever, just isn't realistic as a standard to which we can bind an owner for real estate. And so, I mean, it's a good question. If you go down that road, that condition probably should have a time limit on it. Whatever it is, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. But I don't know that it would be enforceable if it were open-ended forever. As a standard, there just wouldn't be one.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, I can consent to that. We will never apply for another conditional use, temporary use permit at that property because we will not be there after this year. Our property will be sold as of November 1st.
Any questions, Jim, Craig?
Could you just get April, put that list of property or structures back up?
April, could you put that list of talking about?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
I think so. Seemed like there was more than that.
there's one before it.
I think it's page, well, in our packet, it's page 4.
Page 3 on the presentation.
Okay, page 3 on the present. Okay, there we go. Go up a little bit.
Yeah, I see the one in the staff report. It's all on one page.
I don't know that I can get it all in one page. I'm sorry.
Page 4.
Go to the staff report in the agenda. It's all there on one page. It's on page 2 of 5.
Okay, I'm pulling it up now.
There's
Is this for the, this is for the temporary permit, correct?
Number 11.
yes, ma'am. And Thomas O'Kelly is available now by Zoom if the board has any specific questions about the permitting.
Page 2.
Yes, sir. Which got 1.0 through 8.3.
Do you want to see the actual map or the table?
No, this is fine. That's what I was looking.
Mr. Jenkins, on your map, you say, where exactly is Shuffler Road?
Where your left hand is. Where your thumb is.
It says Old Link Road.
Oh, that's a
Oh,
private
yes.
road.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Mike, any questions?
No, well, I'm looking at this 1.0 through 8.3. So I assume that if it says, for instance, the asylum says 6.0 through 6.3, that that's 4 different buildings?
Yeah, it's actually Rowing Salisbury school system trailers is what it is. And they have a firewall that separates the buildings from building. They have a fire door that separates them, so it makes them independent structures. They're not attached, the roofs are not attached, they're just buddy close together.
Okay, so they're.
And the 6.4, I think, is out there listed with it, is just a storage building. I mean, it's not used. There's just plywood stored in it. We had stated on all the storage areas that were concerned, we would use them, that we would padlock them and the fire marshal could padlock them. There's the storage trailer, 4.0 is another classroom trailer. It's just a storage trailer for excess costumes that we don't use. The 6.4 is another building the same way. It's a building on skids. Over half the buildings are buildings on skids that were brought in, already built. The asylum, we did the asylum buildings, Jamie drew the plans on and has already went through Thomas O'Kelly, has already been approved.
If I may, that, when he says approved, that means the plan review was approved, but it was never inspected.
Yeah.
He did not follow through and have the building inspected and the permits come out. So part of a plan review is if you're going to do a commercial building, you go to the building inspection, you present a plan. They may have approved a plan, but they never came back, as I understand it, and told building inspections, we've built it, here it is, come out and make sure it's safe. So they didn't do that. So the plan may have been approved, but the building was never permitted by Rowan County to be occupied.
Correct, but I was told by Ed Muir not to go any further after plan review. I have the email from Ed.
Well,
that was where it stopped. That's why it stopped there.
The fact remains, the buildings have never been permitted to be occupied for commercial use.
Correct.
So according to this, the only building that's the public can be in is 1.0?
Yeah, out of approximately 20 buildings, only one has been permitted to be occupied for commercial use or to be occupied by anybody.
I want to clarify that statement that you just made. What I told him was at the beginning of the rezoning application, not to do anything because he wanted to go in and start building the road and all the improvements. I said, you don't need to do any of that. That didn't negate the fact that these had been there when these were added in 17, 18, or 19, or 20 without permits. I don't want you to be misled by what you just said.
And
I did not tell him not to
After the plan review.
And let me
was done in
explain
2020.
Ed's position. The preliminary plans submitted to planning admitted some of these buildings. If you count the number of buildings on this document that the attorney handed out tonight, it does not add up to this. For example, it does not show there is a mine shaft. That's absent, so Ed would not have known that. It does not show where the building between the mine shaft and the other, that there's, 3 or 4 or 5 buildings there. So that has been admitted from the plan that you have before you tonight. So, even the mine, for the mine shaft is the best example of what's not on.
The mine shaft is listed to be demolished on our application.
That the plan that you have before you tonight does not include the mine shaft, as was prepared by their engineer.
All right, any other questions for TJ? All right, any questions for Mr. Yeoman? Any questions for Jay? Any questions for Mike Zimmerman? No?
He doesn't know anything.
All right. Grant deny or table, temporary permit 01-21. I don't have a long speech prepared. I know you'd be happy to hear that. That might be a first. Frankly, the last thing I want to do, TJ, is to cut you off cold turkey. Bottom line for me is this has just become too much. We're being asked to ignore too much in order to give you the benefit of the doubt and provide another temporary permit. That's where I stand. Don't know where the other commissioners stand. Like I said last, well, I'll just leave it at that.
Well, like I said last time, if all the stuff had been fixed in the past, I mean, I'm looking here, I think it's like 19 buildings and only one of them can have people in it. And so I guess people have been going through these buildings the last 7 years or whenever they were built. I just don't, I think it puts the county in a bad place if they go out there and they, for instance, this mine shaft collapses on someone. I mean, what liability are we going to have? So I think there's just too many questions to approve it, in my opinion.
I'm just going to say safety, the fact that there won't be a second way in and out. The fact that there are so many buildings that haven't been approved. The fact that the incident that happened last year with the shooting, in talking with the officer that responded, I got a much different picture than what was presented last time. And when you've got a deputy sheriff's officer telling you that he was afraid for his personnel, I really don't think that that is something that we can take lightly.
Anything from y'all?
I just want to say that I know that this is the county's job. He's been doing this for 10 years. He did have one incident there that was not of his making. Nothing collapsed, nobody tripped inside. I just really wish we could work out a way to let him operate, close down and move, which is what he's indicated he's going to do. And So anyway, that's the way I feel about it.
All right, I'll make the motion. We deny, temporary use permit 01-21.
Chair,
Other discussion?
we need to work through
Yes, yes.
work through the
yes.
conditions. I mean, work through the questions on the bottom of page 2 of the staff report. Zoning criteria.
So we have the same three issues, findings. Finding 1, use will not endanger the public health, safety, or general welfare. Although established as a temporary permit 01-17 and temporary 01-20 permit conditions, the applicant has, let me stop right here. We are prepared to either approve or disapprove. So we're going to approve, we're going to read why we're approving. We're disapproving, we're going to read why we're disapproving. So we all came in tonight, we came in with open minds, and I'm either going to read from disapproval on these 3 findings or read from approval. Finding 1, use will not endanger the public health, safety, and general welfare is the first finding. Have to be, although established as temporary 01-17 and 01-20 permanent conditions, the applicant has failed to have the majority of buildings at his venue that are open to the general public lawfully permitted and inspected. In fact, the number of non-permitted buildings used on increased along with the frequency of events. Continuing to invite the public to these events, knowing the majority of the structures are utilized are not building and fire code compliant as a disregard to the safety and health of the general public. 2, use will not have substantial negative impact on adjoining properties. Commission respects the property's rights of an individual to use their property, but when a use creates impacts to the community, such as noise and traffic late in the evening, this use is not compatible with the surrounding area on permanent or temporary. 3, use will be approved for a specific period of time not to exceed 2 years. Traffic noise and other issues resulting from previous temporary use permits issued in 2017 and 2020 substantiate that another temporary request not be issued for this site. So I offer those as 3 findings. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And then we have a motion second on denial of temporary 01-21. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. All right. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Anything else, Jay?
No.